I often find myself thinking about what kind of use this writing has. Admittedly, there's an amount of self-loathing that surrounds it. I think of my dad, of how many people he helped in his career, as a pediatric dentist, as a surgeon. The severity and the magnitude of the pain he alleviated for people in his work is immeasurable. As his son, the shadow of that sometimes loomed large. It's been easy for me to feel useless in comparison. To admit the thoughts that are there, the self-loathing that goes on, how to iron that out, and to reconcile it in some way. I spent a long time feeling inferior to him, but as I try to think more clearly about it, I realize how grateful I am to have been the son of someone who was able to be as useful and as helpful as he was. It seems now the work for me is to make a discipline from that gratuity. When I spoke to Stephen, I told him about what I was thinking, to ask his advice, and he reminded me in so many words that often we write to feel less alone as we read to feel less alone. Our conversation trailed along, and we ended up talking about Rembrandt and self-portraiture. Later on, I found a book on the internet about Rembrandt. It's written by Roger Housden. There was a passage early in the book that I wrote down into my notebook. Some commentators have wondered if the man was a narcissist purely and simply infatuated with his own image. But just look at the paintings, especially the later ones. Rembrandt's late self-portraits are the most humble personal statement ever to come down to us in paint. In them, he shows us that there is a way to look in the mirror without flinching, without running from ourselves, without criticizing, and also without embellishing. In portrait after portrait, his eyes are wide open to himself as he is on a particular day, wide open and utterly accepting. He saw himself with an eye that was clear and yet warm. Whether or not he was having a bad hair day, this is hardly the attitude of a narcissist who would only ever want himself basked in the best of light. I continued to read the book in the morning and for most of the next day. The tragedy and loss that Rembrandt endured is so far beyond the scope of what I've known in my life. And somehow, it gave me hope that no matter the magnitude of the tragedy we endure, that there can be redemption, perhaps through our work, if we are able to see ourselves for who we truly are. I think sometimes in my better mind of all that I've admired and been in awe of in my life, all that I've aspired to and the ambition I've felt, regardless of my accomplishments, the appetite for success, the guilt and shame that I've felt, the joy and the wonder I've experienced, it's purpose enough to look closely, without wavering, without flinching, to accept what is. To find some sense of gratuity for what is, as a discipline in and of itself. I've begun to criticize my ambition, the desire to be successful, as often it is only a desire to fill a void within ourselves. A self-portrait in which we want to angle the camera a certain way, the desire to look good, to look powerful or intelligent or calm or whatever it is, the discomfort we can feel when we see a photo of ourselves that we don't like, when we hear a recording of our voice played back to us, when we're reminded of something someone said to us in the past. It seems that the more we are able to close that gap, the discrepancy between who we think that we are and who we are, the better off we will be. The expectation we have of others and how things should operate, to see it for what it is, as a means of getting by. And to be grateful for the work that I've done today, to be grateful for the connections my writing has made here and there, that I'm doing the work I meant to do, to have confidence in my own volition that that is so, that this writing, as the peak of my success, is fine, to look forward to every day I am able to continue, that my book is coming along as it is, to try to realize the endlessness of the ambition I feel, that maybe it is less of a virtue, but rather an attempt to fill infinite emptiness that there is, that no amount of praise or popularity will insulate my house from what is inevitably to come. To think of Rembrandt and the loss he endured until the very end. It seemed he did what he had to do to get along each day. It wasn't the paint he used, or the canvas, or the way the light was. It was his perseverance. And it seemed the sobriety of his complete humility inevitably was the ultimate fuel. That ability to bring life to the page, that even now, to look at it hundreds of years later, is to feel less alone. My therapist told me that she's quitting. We would have one more session next week, and that would be the end of it. I felt a familiar kind of loss. This kind of abruptness, this kind of blindsiding was jarring, and I felt an illusion that I was floating off somewhere. She was a great comfort to me. I thought that she would be there through the extent of my dad's illness, but it seems our time has come to an end. Still, I am deeply grateful to this therapist of mine. I can see the ways in which she propped me up and dusted me off and showed me that, perhaps, I was good. I will trust that she thinks I am ready to endure what is to come. The extent of our time together, I will trust that it was enough, that I have what I need to get through what there is, that her ability to connect with me, to look clearly through the bullshit, and to see the humility of what truly is one that I can reflect back to others in my own way. And that attempt, that perpetual struggle, is, perhaps, use enough. In the morning I finished the book I was reading about Rembrandt. I was looking up some of his work online, and I saw that by chance some of his paintings were on display at the gallery here in Toronto. After I finished editing, I decided I would go down and see them. On the subway there, I noticed how little of a connection I felt to all the people around me. All of us trapped below the ground, all of us at the mercy of nothing more than perhaps the fare we'd paid. When I got to the gallery, it took me a bit of circling around to find what I was looking for. I felt a familiar disdain for most of the things that I saw there, until I found, in a small room, the Rembrandt paintings that were there. I looked at each of them, thinking of what they were, and I felt, more so than the strangers on the subway, more so than the people that stood around me, and maybe in some ways more so than my own self, a sense of knowing. One of the portraits stood out to me in specific, a man with a long beard, bald head, and a Jewish-looking hat. The way in which his gaze was directed downward. Maybe he was reading something. I had the sense of the capacity of his struggle, was of his time, and of a world he was born into. And this man, who had been dead for 400 years, I did not expect him to be anything more than what he was.